I'm sure this is very obvious to everyone watching this, but it wasn't always to me. I used to sort of, in terms of wargaming and history, really just see things through the prism of, you know, Britain and British history. But it was kind of almost as exciting to me an idea as when, people tell you, oh, the dinosaurs didn't die out. It was the non-avian dinosaurs, and birds are dinosaurs. As exciting as that idea was, people always spoke about the fall of Rome. But, it didn't really fall. We all kind of knew it didn't really fall. Everyone knew there was Byzantium. But, they didn't call themselves the Byzantines. They called themselves, the Romanoi, the last Romans, basically. And they never saw themselves as the last Romans. They just saw themselves as the Romans. And, there was this Greek-speaking empire that basically was modern Turkey and Greece and the Balkans. And being British, my geography is not that great, so whatever is under the 1041, 1042 area. And in wargaming terms, they have some funky looking troop types which look obviously familiar, but weird because they look kind of, to me, slightly Middle Eastern and Arabic, but clearly aren't. Maybe vaguely Russian, but clearly aren't. And they don't look Latin or Western, but they are, compatible with, fighting Vikings, fighting Normans, fighting Arab and Moor factions. And isn't that fascinating? Because there are at least two miniatures agnostic, well, I suppose it's history, so everything is miniatures agnostic, two miniatures agnostic rule systems, which are pretty fun and interesting, and which I have played before, which cover the Byzantines, being Saga Age of Vikings and Lion Rampant, which is released a kind of supplement called A Viking in the Sun, about Harald Hardrada and his exciting trip and adventures to Byzantium and the world of the Mediterranean just before the Crusades. And there are loads of free resources around in terms of understanding the history in an accessible way. If you want the kind of overarching big picture view, the Fall of Civilizations podcast here is fantastic in explaining how the eastern half got left behind and then nibbled down till it eventually crumbled. And if you're interested in learning a lot in some very amazing deep dives, you can listen to the 235 episodes of the History of Byzantium podcast, which is very engrossing because, frankly, it's all very Games of Thrones. And I suspect no mistake that there are the similarities that there are. And as I said, if you're British, you learn about areas of the world you wouldn't really have thought about, because this empire's boundaries are basically the Balkans, the Persians, the Arab territories, and then the Crusades smash into them. So it's all very, very interesting. And particularly, there are some very focused episodes on some key battles, and a few episodes on, what was the Byzantine army like at, 800 AD, 900 AD, 1000 AD, which are really interesting if you're into this period, breaking down the troop types, the tactics, the strategies, so you understand exactly what they all do and why. Now, two things open this up to someone like me who doesn't want to start collecting 1,000 historical miniatures for a mass battles system, and that is that there are, as I mentioned, two gaming systems where you don't really need more than sort of, 50, 60 troops aside, tops. And the first one obviously is Saga, where, as you can see here, you get your warlord. You can have a Byzantine kind of, they're called Hearthguards, but elite, paid, formal elites on horses, and they can unusually have composite bows because that was the environment they were in, barbarians, well, what they call barbarians, like Hunnish type tribal peoples would come flying in, grab stuff, and then wander off, or turn up and trash one of your cities, or turn up and say, we're taking the city, on the one flank, and on the other flank, the Sassanid Persians would turn up, with, similar type mounted troops and cause mayhem, and so you end up responding to that with similar troop types. These fast-moving horsemen with these composite bows who kind of trick you, lure you into following them, and then when you're all hot and tired, they just shoot you to death like a pincushion. You've got the Varangians. These guys can just hire basically anybody because they control all the trade through there and through here in the Eastern Mediterranean. So you can hire these Scandinavian Varangians. You've got your Clivanaforoi, which I think are cataphracts, super heavy kind of knight type equivalents, but not quite knights. And then you've got, your bog standard warriors and levies. But again, they're not just feudal subjugated peoples. They're, paid employees if they're good, and kind of auxiliary guys hired on the boundaries, the borders of the empire to, occasionally man the forts of the empire. And then there's the lion rampant system, which is pretty basic, but great if you just want to roll some dice. And though I haven't really played it, I've obviously played a fair bit of Dragon Rampant, which is the fantasy version and a straight lift by the author himself. But the second thing that really opens this up is that Fireforge Games has, over time, made an entire range of largely plastic Byzantine miniatures with a few resin kind of leadership options. So let's start talking Turkey, or at least start talking Byzantine spearmen, of which you get 25 hard plastic 28mm spearmen in the box. So you get 5 dudes per sprue, 5 sprues. You can go with the later Crusader era type shields or these earlier shields. Not sure what that puts them to. I don't know, 700, 800 AD, who knows. And you can either give them swords or spears. These are your standard Byzantine infantrymen. They went together very nicely. Again, apparently they're wearing metallic lamellar armor, a helmet, a kite shield for more around the period of the Crusades. Again, they were supposed to have swords, but again, I thought, why stick them on? It'll just involve more painting and pain, and who's looking at the swords? And they've got helmets, and they were a good range of heads. I'm not sure what to do about a kind of command part for the unit. I think Fireforge do sell, resin command groups. They went together very nicely, no complaints. This time I remembered not to make the usual cock-up I do with infantrymen. I remembered that actually if you position them a little bit at an angle, with 1 foot forward, then it works out better, because otherwise the spear ends up going over the face. And they also look slightly more kind of menacing. Although I'm not sure that the Byzantines are supposed to look menacing at all, because according to the Viking in the Sun book, what does it say about them? The Byzantine army was the most diverse of the Mediterranean. Like it, we like diversity. Any troop type can be used, great. The other side of the coin was they had no particular specialty. Sounds like me. The main subdivision was between provincial armies and elite forces. They also included loads of foreign mercenaries, which is fantastic. So you can include all manner of things. You can include Turkish horse archers, obviously the Varangians, which I've got here. You could have a few Norman cavalry. You can have, pre-Islamic Arabs, which sounds fun. Because at the time they obviously just thought, hey, these are just a bunch of desert tribesmen. Give them a bit of coin. They can help us. Nothing will come of them ever, surely. More for them when they all get united on the edge of the empire. And they're quite diverse within themselves, but how could someone like me be able to work out the difference between people from Macedonia, Armenia, and Sicily? But yes, they're not all necessarily Greek speakers. They like to believe they had a more scientific approach to warfare, so they're a bit hoity-toity, nothing wrong with that. There's all manner of shenanigans going on behind the scenes in these rules with the Byzantines. You can affect the courage of the enemy, no doubt through horrendous bribery, but morale was frequently poor, and backstabbing and infighting was their weakness. And sometimes, as at the Battle of Manzikert, where they lost such a big chunk of their empire they never quite recovered, to the Caliphate, they'd rather lose a battle than suffer another victory of that swine, their commander. That's what it says. Oh well. It'll be fun. The more you read about the Byzantines, the more you realise there is something reminiscent of them in the gold cloaks. The guys in the corners there, in Game of Thrones.
No bloodshed. Tell your men to lay down their swords. No one needs to die.
But then I guess the word Byzantine means that for a reason. But anyway, please do like this if you thought it was vaguely interesting. Comment if you have any suggestions as to any other miniatures I could use for my Byzantine army, or I could take it. I mean, obviously, we'll see how it goes with the various kind of low-level miniature skirmish games I'm proposing to use these for, and I've got all the bits and pieces ready to put out some short videos on how I turned some Foundry Vikings into what I thought were possible Varangian Guard, and on the and unboxing and assembling of the horse archers from Fireforge, the Byzantine horse archers, and the Byzantine cataphracts, plus the psiloi, being the guys with slings and javelins. I hope you had a good Christmas, and see you soon.